So, chapter 10.
Testing.
Rachel domed the shrew. I'm looking at Chris's notes here.
Don't look at my notes. They're a whole thing.
In 1996, Scholastic began publishing Animorphs. Over the next 6 years, Catherine Applegate and her husband Michael Grant, under the pseudonym K.A. Applegate, produced 54 main series books, several spin-offs, and inspired a TV series, graphic novels, and a cult following. We can't tell you where we live. We can't even tell you our last names. But we can tell you our thoughts and feelings on this series, book by book. I'm Eddie.
I'm Chris.
I'm Miranda.
And we're the
Anidorks!
These may be kids' books, but we discuss dark themes and mature content. There may also be some explicit language. Listener discretion is advised.
After, her encounter with Chapman where he's like, oh, wake up from your dreams aren't real, and she's like, I wish, whatever. I actually think it's really sweet that the next chapter says that they couldn't go the next 2 nights for, really silly child reasons. It's like, oh, there was a paper to write, and then it was Cassie's dad's birthday. We couldn't save the world tonight,
Yeah. They're not all in the same classes, which makes me wonder who has overlapping classes.
Well, clearly Rachel and Marco, if they both have to write a paper. But
if I ever have to write a standardized test style, word or logic problem, I'm going to use all the names for Animorphs.
Yeah.
If Marco morphs into a bear during chemistry and Cassie's outside as a horse.
So they have I'm just trying to remember all the complicated steps it took to get here. Rachel turned into a shrew. The shrew attracted the cat. They gained the cat morph.
Yes, but she hasn't done it
then
yet.
they called it a day.
Yeah, they were like, we're all bleeding a lot.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're gonna leave evidence.
So now they're all back outside because they all need to be there, even though only Rachel's going to
Well, they
morph.
have to make sure that the real fluffer stays away.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. Best B plot in book history. I want a short story about that.
Rachel is going to turn into Fluffer and then infiltrate.
Everybody knows that Rachel's in too deep because she's going in there to save her friend. And Marco's like, your job is not to help Melissa Chapman. You're supposed to, don't let your feelings, all this stuff. She's like, I know why I'm doing this, Marco. And I'm just like, yeah, bitch. Come on, Marco, you do not get a say in this. I'm Team Rachel. Team Rachel.
Yeah.
I'm Team Rachel too. She's a complicated figure. As we were talking about in the book, there's a lot of really bizarre energy and allegory in her experience in this book, and I feel like her having secrets from the rest of the group is actually more contentious than I think I even realized the first time we read it. She's just underreporting. She's about to start underreporting.
She lies
all book.
So they're getting ready. They got Tobias, his eyes in the sky, and then
It's time to cat burgle. It's time to cat
burgle.
It's time to cat burgle.
Tobias slides into the DMs with a little private thought speak to Rachel. And he's like, just, let me know if you're in any danger. She's like, thanks. She actually doesn't say anything.
She didn't need to.
Her morph is wild. She goes full on fur-covered human-shaped person, and Cassie and Marco are both weirdly into it.
They're very into it. Cassie is like,
reasons.
oh my God, I'm having feelings I don't understand right now.
And Marco's like, we can monetize this.
Which both of them have their priorities straight, and I think that that's healthy.
She does not drop to all fours.
Oh, you're right. She just shrinks down in her clothing. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is I think we need to track now who drops to all fours and who doesn't.
Okay.
Who does?
All right.
That might say a lot about the power dynamics of this group.
Rachel learns that her gender identity is Clint Eastwood, too.
Oh, yeah. She's like, I don't identify as a
good.
girl or a boy. I'm a gunslinger.
Yeah, dude.
We learn about tomcats.
This is insane. this Tomcat thing. Are you like, this is like the dog, but so much weirder.
Right. And so what happens to get us there is after Rachel has like said her goodbyes and almost kills Tobias because cats are apparently programmed to hate birds, she walks up to like a pole and sniffs it, and she smells another tomcat, and this whole Olympics of what being a tomcat means happens in her brain, and it is wild.
It's just really, it's like all the language about dominance and submitting, and like especially in the broader context of just the position in the world of relative Jake that girl Jake Rachel has to put up with, or something like that. Not that Rachel's girl Jake. I think Jake is more girl Rachel, but I don't know. Something about this section really landed, because she's turning into a tomcat. She's turning into, She thinks
she's hot shit, and she's like, oh, I got this smooth confidence, and she says she doesn't want to turn off the cat's brain because she likes his arrogance and like specifically using male pronouns for the cat. But then when she just, all from the smell of pee, she's like, I would have to submit to this cat. Yeah. And that's just...
It's just the way things are.
The way things are.
And they are 13.
It's in his urine where any cat could read it. Is that a quote? I think that's a quote.
Yeah, it is.
What is K.A. Applegate thinking? She didn't need all this.
Right. She's right.
Well, she's right, but it's like meta right. It's like, it's what I needed to hear. I don't know.
Do you think she had to push back on Scholastic to get this into the...
Oh, man. I'm starting to think they didn't read the second book. Yeah, I'm starting to think...
I don't even think an editor read this book.
Like, it was like underneath the first book, and they read the first book, and then they were like, we'll just skim the other ones, but I think this is a go, right? It's a go.
And then judge a book by its cover.
It was a neat cover. She also, a term we come back to again and again, she jumps onto a railing that is as high as a 2-story building would be for a human.
Liquid steel. Yeah, liquid steel also comes in. One thing that's really interesting about like the morph into this cat and also the liquid steel and stuff like that is, this is a quote from the book. I felt like I've been boiled down to my absolute essentials. Like I wasn't even made of plain old flesh and bones anymore. I felt like liquid steel. I feel like the pinnacle of evolution in K.A. Applegate's eyes is cats. Like
she's not
tigers.
Wrong.
You're right.
Rachel continues to lie to her friends and say that she was just playing the part of a cat when she took a really long sniff of this telephone pole or whatever to get this Tom's smell. But then I love how she says the cat didn't understand the notion of obeying, because I'm like, you're right. Cats don't understand the concept that they should like do what you tell them. It's not something that has ever entered their thoughts.
Yeah.
But then she does something really interesting, and I was really focused on this as I was reading it. She conjures up the smell of that tomcat that had cowed Fluffer, and she uses the memory of that smell to like beat the cat's consciousness into submission. And that is so wild.
Yes.
Remember, we're not hot shit. Remember, there's that tomcat out there.
Maybe you should let me use the body a little bit,
This book in general, so we talked about the lying, we're talking about Rachel wrestling with the cat's brain, and then also when we mix all of the Yeerk stuff in, there's all of this focus on the splitting, like having like multiple consciousnesses within one body, because we'll get to the Chapman's wrestling with the Yeerk presence, but then also I feel like the Secrets connects to that, like all of these little pockets
keeping
of
another version of yourself inside. Very much.
Oh, good catch.
I couldn't put my finger on it, but I just was like, there's a weird focus on this book in a way there wasn't in the first, on that sort of
I feel like
material.
In the first book, there's a lot of just presenting the idea that you can put your mind into another form. Like, it's like, oh, this is a dog with the mind of a human, and you sort of see that that's not exactly what it is, but this book really goes into that. And in the first book, totally, you think that the Yeerk just has, like, 100% sort of control over the person, but, like, it turns out that it's more similar to the way the Animorphs are controlling their morphs, and that similarity is, like, a little disquieting for me. It's like a little, I don't love it. I don't love it.
You don't love it from the perspective of the Animorphs using the animals?
Yeah, it starts to, I feel like we're leading toward, and I don't know, but like it feels like drawing parallels between
There's definitely parallels. I definitely see the parallels drawn of like interior versus exterior personship, and like how like we talk about like Rachel containing different morphs and being like, you know, a cat and a shrew and a whatever and blah blah blah, and like all those different morphs in one creature. I feel like are you sort of like hinting at the Yeerks and the Animorphs being equivocated in some way?
Yeah, and it's not quite the same because obviously you're morphing into a version of that cat. It's not like you're taking that cat's autonomy.
But I think I hear where you're going with this. Are we creating a cat that feels pain that isn't the person making the morph? Is that sort of where you're going with this?
I think the thing that's been at the back of my mind is that these technologies, not that the Yeerks is so much a technology, but they seem deeply related to me.
The Yeerks bug me from a technological standpoint. Like the idea that a Yeerk could crawl into any creature, find the quote-unquote brain, and then have like teeth that do a thing that like make it control your brain. Like that to me is like, I want someone to like fix that sci-fi gap for me.
So I actually have a theory about a specific part of this, and I will get into it a little bit later. But I will say just now, the size of the head seems to be important.
Well, oh god damn it, you're good. I read that same line today.
So Rachel arrives and Tobias is like, this is the Chapman's house. And she's like, okay, so like, first of all, this is my friend. I know where her house is. Second of all, bitch, it smells like me. Of course this is my house. Like, and she's like, this is all mine, baby. And he's like, remember this? No, this is Chapman's house. He's a Yeerk.
Have you ever heard this factoid about like when you go away for vacation for like 2 weeks or longer and you come home and your house has a smell? Remember that smell because that's how you smell, and you don't. It's like, yeah, that's what someone told me once. I have no idea if it's true. I've not looked that up.
Or at least it's how your house smells to other people.
Because we all remember houses that had a smell. Like we all remember going to someone's house and it's like the smell here is different.
I remember the house having a scent, and for some reason, this is probably wrong, but what my mind always links it to is Pop-Tarts, but I think that's just because I ate so many. It was the only place I ate
Pop-Tarts while you were over, for sure.
The Yeerks controlling the Chapmans, the Yeerk controlling Mrs. Chapman. She has to cut vegetables, and I want to know how the cooking of this Yeerk controlling Mrs. Chapman.
It's so. I wonder if he like if it like lets her control the body. It's like
you
just slice the carrots like normal, just like normal carrot. Like.
And then it's like thinner. This is a salad.
Yeah,
we need that to be
driving.
Would you want to chew that? No.
Whatever you make, I'm backing out when you eat it, all right? You have to live with it.
Bite-sized means you'll be biting it.
The Yeerks are upholding the gender roles of this house, though, because they just turned Mr. Chapman off in front of the TV.
Yeah.
Without even turning the TV on. No music, no television, sitting and staring.
Yeah. He's a freak, dude. Like, Chapman's a freak.
I also just love that the cat doesn't think human smells are important, and so it's really hard for Rachel to focus on them because the cat's just immediately like, whatever they're doing, it can't be important. So the Chapmans are sitting around being weird, and she uses her superior cat hearing to hear Melissa struggling to do math homework, and she's like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
Carry the one.
Carry the one, divide by the square root, no, multiply by the square root. But then Chapman heads down to the basement, and it's like a very abrupt, like it's at a certain time, he stands up and he's like, I have to go to the basement now. He doesn't say that, but like that's like the general air about him is a very robotic, purposeful.
And 17,000 Mississippi, time to go to the basement.
And down she goes into the basement.
Yeah, totally ballsy. And is this when Tobias pinks her about going too deep into the heart of the beast?
Yeah, and
Yes.
we get a little of the thought speech limits and how far apart they are and all these things, because eventually they can't hear each other anymore. And she's like, "We're fine, I'm fine, don't worry about it." And he's like, "Rachel, you sound like you're getting farther away." And she's like, "Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I'm a cat. It's fine.
Then they mentioned that she can hear spiders in the TV.
Yeah, that's a
basement.
really, I've always wondered how television works.
Really disturbed by that.
I think Rachel's the killer of the group.
She's the assassin.
Yes, yeah. I forget, they have killed. They haven't explicitly killed, but
No, they
Rachel
have.
has. Yeah, Rachel
like
has
mauled a man
as
with her
an
tusks.
elephant.
No, she sends a human being flying, and they never
A human
see
controller,
him land.
yeah.
But they blatantly, gorily kill taxons for sure. They burst into goo and
don't lose sleep over it.
they don't seem to have.
No, she lost sleep over being a shrew.
The maggots were way worse.
Yeah, which
So Chapman goes into this door, and behind the door is a secret door.
But I have to, and the secret door, the steel door opened, it slid into the wall like Star Trek. And I think in my notes, hold on, it says hashtag swooshed shut. Whatever that sound is. Can you get that sample, Miranda, for the
I can try.
description of the thing?
I don't have the note, but I do definitely know that I had the thought, aren't those just pocket doors?
They are!
What are pocket doors?
Well,
Pocket
they're
doors-
they slide into these little holes in your walls that you can
They make the
They're
walls slightly
just
thicker.
pocket doors.
Yeah.
They're only Star Trek because they're metal.
So, is this Yeerk technology?
Could be.
Is that what's implied?
It's so funny to imagine him having to explain the contractors to Melissa and be like, no, they're just adding a little man cave for me down in the basement. Yeah,
Daddy's special room.
I want a place to work out. It's fine.
My man cave. Yeah. Wait, but I wonder about this. What does Yeerk technology look like? Is Yeerk technology all of the technology that they get from the races they take over?
It must
Because
be.
They
But the
have
Yeerk
to
pools.
have had some form of technology to get to the races that they take over, don't
Yes.
they?
Well, there's
Well,
gotta.
no.
Yeah, this is an incredible question. You guys are geniuses. This is an insane question because the anthropology of Yeerks must be so bizarre because the chondrona rays are a thing the Yeerks need, so they motivate other species to make chondrona rays or Yeerk pools happen for them. So a Yeerk pool would be designed to the specifications of what a host could operate for the Yeerk pool.
But what is a naturally occurring Yeerk pool? Because they have to exist or these guys would have died.
You're right.
Aren't they
yeah.
mimicking the sun? Is that not what we learned? They're
Their
mimicking.
Chondrona rays
sun,
have something
or
to do with
their
their sun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Miranda,
yeah.
sure. I'm less certain. I'm gonna shrug. I'm gonna do
Yeah.
this. I'm gonna verbally shrug.
I feel like the Yeerks definitely drew the short straw that they are this intelligent and also slugs.
Must be so frustrating.
This is
the run of the universe.
so we're in the secret office and Chapman just sits down at a very normal desk, but then he runs his hand over a panel and he does all these weird beep boop things.
Beep boop things, light panels, Star Trek.
And then he waits.
Cheerful colors.
Cheerful colors. That's right. I thought it was an interesting note that they were
Very
cheerful
comforting.
colors. She tries to look nonchalant and hang out and just
We
be
get
a
it.
cat.
You're nonchalant. Quit rubbing our
She
noses
talks
in
about
it.
how at one point about
You
how
didn't
odd it
want
would
me.
look for,
Hold on. I have to call you out. You didn't want me to make that Futurama joke so hard. Because you thought of it 8 times and you were like, Chris, please don't
I'm
make it.
everybody's made that joke and it's no,
Yeah.
you've just made it 8 times to yourself.
No, but I'm just saying what blows my mind as your sibling is you steamrolling over it and being like, God, I'm going to have to decide whether or not to cut that later. And this,
Yeah, it's I'm going to be sitting there going, do I cut me talking over it or do I cut him talking under me? A hologram appears of Visser 3 and again we get the top to bottom. Actually, this time it's a bottom to top. We start with the hooves.
because she's on the floor, yeah.
And it's in color, which is like weird for me for a hologram, right? She's like the blue fur, and I'm like, oh, so you can like, this is like a colorful hologram. That's cool. And she says that like
when were you born? The 1950s?
We don't have holograms.
Yeah, but color TV is like, I'm looking at a color zoom of you right now.
You're right. When they're listening to this podcast for the historical record in 200 years, they're going to be like, they didn't have colored holograms?
Rachel met one Andalite, and she said, I knew this was no true Andalite. I don't think that she can judge this sort of
Can't
thing.
make that judgment.
Especially from a hologram. Like, you know,
Yeah.
you're not getting the vibe. Visser 3 is here, and Chapman introduces himself as Innis 226 of the Sulpniar pool. And they say, may the Kandrona shine and strengthen you.
I think we should say that at every sign-off from now on.
How many versions of this like Yeerk address do you think they went through before they settled on this one? Or do you think it was the first one?
How long do you think they used each version at dinner to test it out and see if it was feasible?
And also, Sulpniar. think they just-
It's a collection of consonants and vowels for sure.
Yeah. I think they wanted. It sounds like when in Twin Peaks when the people talk.
They talk
backwards,
backwards. Yeah.
Here's an interesting thing. So it's a hologram, and I believe they explicitly point out that Visser 3 is being sort of like translated into audible speech.
Yeah, it's brought up that like thought speech doesn't seem to cross it because she's like, oh, why can I hear him? Wouldn't he just be directing his thoughts at the person he's talking to?
Interesting.
But she realizes that the technology must not be equipped to handle thought speech, which we, at this point at least, believe is something that only people with the power to morph have. So that would make sense that the Yeerks can't replicate that.
Which just feels like a really nice reinforcement of a principle she already put into place. Like a little nice ticket of consistency in this sci-fi universe.
Yeah.
So Visser 3 asks for a status report, and he's like, have they captured the Andalite bandits? And he's like real worked up about these bandits. And he's like, this cannot go on. The Council of 13 will hear of it. And I'm just like, okay.
The use of the word bandits feels feels wild to me.
Yeah,
I guess, but bandits?
This is a smear campaign, you know what I mean? It's like, this is the propaganda.
Okay. So this is what the Council of 13 must call them then. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
The Andalites are losing this war, right?
Yes. Well, at least here.
We don't know what shape they're in back on their Andalite homeworld,
Probably like bottom part deer.
With a tail that looks like it could do some serious damage.
Sorry.
Yeah. So we learned about I don't think we've heard about the Council of 13 yet.
Yeah.
That's important here.
I'm excited. So, like, if you had to guess, do they sit on little slug chairs in like a little slug amphitheater? Like, if you had to guess,
Your guess is as good as mine.
Fair enough. All right.
I hope so. I feel like I haven't been holding enough space for the fact that the Yeerks are slugs in my brain. Yeah. I'm always imagining them in other forms, and it brings me great joy to imagine
maybe they're just
their
like
slug government
in little basins.
Yeah,
it's like a stool with a basin at the top, and they just like peek over the edges.
Are the Yeerks cute?
I think the Yeerks are probably cuter than we'll ever know. We never got to, it's like slugs can be cute.
Absolutely,
the Andalites are prejudiced. I think
that's true.
Absolutely.
Especially against the taxons. They're evil. We've talked about the Council of 13. Some threats have been made. The Council of 13 is angry, and we start to, learn that there's a hierarchy going on. Visser 3's not at the top. But Rachel realizes she can smell the Yeerk in Chapman, which is something that Jake had sort of not picked up on the fact he was doing in book 1. So, like, that sort of, like, pulls the thread through. And as she's smelling it, that's when she gets caught. That's when she betrays herself a little bit. Visser 3 sees her and he's like, "What is that?
What's going on over here? What's all this?" It is
called a cat.
Yeah. What do you think she was doing?
I think she was just like
probably
sniffing and looking
literally
weird.
Sniffing and
really
sitting
walked
there.
up to him. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, was just like, I'm a cat. And was.
I feel like bear cub up on hind legs, like
the open mouth they do when they smell something kind of weird.
Yeah. It's so cute. I like that Chapman also says it belongs to the girl. The host daughter.
The host. Yes.
Yeah.
And then Visser 3 is just like real hand wavy. Oh, I see. Yes. End it. Full send
Kill
it. Yeet it.
Get it? Yeet it. Whatever you gotta do. Throw in New York pool.
She relies on the cat behavior to just be a normal cat and not freak out, because that would have given her away. Because the Visser has sort of caught on that this could potentially be an Andalite.
An Andalite spy. Yeah. One of the bandits.
And so she meows.
Yeah, which is a good reply. That's a good witty, that's pithy. It's brevity is meow. Wait.
Chapman says it's the sound a cat makes, Visser. I believe it wishes to eat. She really emphasizes that he's nervous.
Big stutter.
Yeah.
Do you think it's the Yeerk stuttering?
Yeah.
Or Chapman? I don't know. Sawap. Yeah, it's a really good sound effect. They're great sound effects in these books.
Oh, it's the tail.
Visser 3 tries to do some damage with that tail.
As a hologram.
Yeah.
As a hologram. Which, I'm sorry.
He's just messing with it, because the cat reacts like it's real and tries to fight back. That earns the respect of Visser 3, who responds, ha.
Ha, ha, ha.
Ha. Yeah, it takes everybody a second to realize that Visser 3 is laughing.
Was a laugh.
But then he says, and this is like one of my favorite quotes in like the whole book, is, "What a ferocious little beast," Visser 3 said approvingly. "See how he did not back away or run. I am many times his size, and yet he struck at me. A pity that the species is too small to serve as a host." Ding, ding, ding. That's what I was mentioning earlier. There seems to be something about the size.
Yeah, and I took that to be like it would be a not useful species to invade, but I think your observation feels more real. Like, I feel like, there might be a physical limit on whether or not a Yeerk can get into a cat's head through the ear.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. I think that's how I'm thinking of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. That's just an intuition that I have.
I'm really impressed because I we've read this book 3 times now, and I did not.
I still didn't get it.
Visser 3 still wants to kill the cat, but Chapman manages to be like, it's Chapman's daughter's cat. It's gonna blow my cover if I randomly murder her cat.
Incidentally, it probably wouldn't. Like, I'm just saying.
You've already been an asshole for like 3 months. Visser praises the cat again, saying that it has the subtlety to manipulate creatures larger than itself and is a worthy creature. That they're gonna kill it until they get rid of the girl, until they've resolved the issue with Melissa.
Talk about funny grammar, funny ambiguous. We're gonna kill it until.
Oh, did I say that? No. We're not gonna kill it until we've resolved the girl thing. And Innis 226 is like the girl, but we had an agreement with the host. And the Visser's like, we use agreements to get hosts, dude. Like, don't take it so seriously. What are they gonna do now that we Yeerked them?
Yeah.
Like,
and then he turns into a very creepy creature, right?
I just want to explain the impetus of why he turns into a creepy creature. He's trying to intimidate Innis 226 to do his job and subdue the person he's hosting, right?
Yes.
So he turns into some sort of creature that's specifically scary to Innis 226.
And Yeerks. It's described as having some sort of weird long tube for a head and like...
Hundreds, maybe thousands of tiny suckers each dripping.
Yeah, and he's able to close this hologram mouth over Chapman's head.
Oh God.
And it's so strange. And he's like, hey, I can suck you out of that host and put a different Yeerk.
Again, the theater kid comes back, which is why I'm convinced he would not say, ha, ha, ha. But he says, don't forget, Innis 226, I gave you this Chapman body. I placed you in this head because I trusted you. I fed you his brain and made you my lieutenant, but I can suck you back out again if you fail me. Would you like to see what happened to the last fool who failed me?
And then he's like, check out my Instagram.
Well, yeah, he's like, what, did he have someone sitting in the control booth with the clip lined up? Like,
right,
what, did he know this was going to happen?
Yeah.
he shows this clip of a human woman having a yeerk sucked out of her head, and she's screaming, but we're supposed to know that the yeerk is who's really in pain, I guess.
Yeah. What happened to the human
dude,
afterwards?
they're dead. They're so dead.
I think she enjoyed it. I mean, she got rid of the urine.
It's kind of like giving birth, you know? It's a really painful process, but for some women.
This is management. This is middle management 101. If he's between the Council of 13 and Innis 226 and here's Visser 3 in the middle, like, you want to manage up from the bottom. You don't want to manage down from the top. You want to support your employees so that they can perform to the best of their abilities, and that will reflect well on you as a manager. But you don't want to take the shit that the Council of 13 puts on you, and you don't want to send it down. That's the one thing I've learned.
I think this is why we can...
Yep.
It's foreshadowing that Visser 3 is just the first boss of the video game.
Literally.
Just
Just a hashtag girl boss of the video game.
Gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss, all day.
I like that Rachel says, then the little movie ended. That's how she described it. So he did play a clip. He had it queued up.
There's a lot
in
of...
my notes. In my notes, it says the Visser's terrifying clip show. Is this like stupid pet tricks with Letterman? Like,
Stupid morph tricks.
So Visser 3 hangs up.
Wait, one thing I
and he
do
called
want to
collect, and we did, we had to accept the charges.
Your joke is so good. Miranda, I'm the worst sibling ever. I swear to God, keep this in the podcast because, like, I just stepped on that was good.
So Visser 3 hangs up, and Yeerk Chapman goes upstairs, and he sees Ms. Chapman, which I think is an interesting choice. That she goes by Ms. I hadn't thought about that actually until just now.
Well caught. Yeah.
But yeah, Ms. Chapman is there, and she's like, "What are the Visser's orders?" And it's like, "Oh, the normal, the usual. Still wants those Andalite bandits, but he's really upset. He morphed into a Vanarx."
Oh, I thought it was a Vanox.
It's Vanarx.
Oh my
I
God.
thought Vanarx, yeah.
Poor kid who read the audiobook.
Okay, that Andalite controlling scum. So they're arguing about the meeting
and
with
we
the Visser.
learned that the Yeerk being sucked out of a head, that was a specific person that Innis 226 knew, and that Ms. Chapman's Yeerk also appears to know, and that was Innis 174.
Yeah.
And Ms. Chapman looked shocked and said, "He used a Vanarx on an Innis of the 2nd century."
So that's like a mind-blowing detail because, like, their calendar, if it's a Yeerk of the 2nd century who is alive recently that this person knew them, we don't know anything about lifespans.
Yeah, what Yeerk century are we in?
Yeah.
Melissa shows up.
Parenting is hard when you're Yeerked.
Your kids are just always showing up when you're Yeerked out of your mind,
They basically tell her to go back and do her math.
And that if she can't figure it out herself, her dad will come help her before she goes to bed.
But they do say, and this is not important, but they do say, like, square roots are hard. They, like, relate to it. And it's like so Yeerk math includes square roots.
That or they're just parroting back what they heard. Also,
that's true too.
Math is, like, real. Math isn't, like, I mean, they might not call it the same thing, but, like, math is real.
No,
It's
that's
not
what
like,
No. I think that's
Yeerk
what I'm...
math has square roots. I mean, in order for their ships to work, it probably has to.
Right. It has to encompass that space of behavior. But I think, like, that's a nice bit of... I don't know. I just enjoyed, like, the idea of math being somehow universal from this alien, and also somehow parenting being universal from this alien. Like,
they're like, we were raised in a pool. Yeah. This child is very needy.
Yeah, I'm surprised that the mom didn't just say, I see. Square roots were much more obvious in the pool. Like, it was much more...
Yeah. I would love to hear their experience from having to kind of raise this human child. I would love to hear them making connections between their own experiences. Like, oh, it's just like how the young slugs are, like seeing similarities in like the development. Even though we're laughing about this, Rachel like experiences as like a really horrible
and it is
thing.
Yeah.
She says it was horrible in a totally different way than the monsters we had fought in the Yeerk pool. This was the kind of horrible that made you want to cry instead of scream. And this sets up actually like a very important part of Rachel's development in this book.
This is definitely where the fight becomes personal for Rachel in a way that I think is really important to her motivation, because she was ready to fight, but I feel like she needed stakes in it.
Yeah. After she comes up from the basement and the parents are talking, and Melissa comes down and gets basically just cold-shouldered by the parents. Melissa goes back up to try and figure out what square roots are all about, and Fluffers McKitty, Rachel, follows. And this is a really tender moment. This is
It really is.
It really is really sweet.
Which is why before we get into it, I'm going to mention that she mentions that the bed could have been the side of a 2-story building. A different 2-story building.
She used it twice in the same book. Chapters apart.
It's difficult to agree on a system of measurement when they're constantly changing forms, I guess. Tobias is also just planting a seed of warning, like, about the real Fluffer walking in.
Trying to get her back. He's like, hey, because Rachel goes to check on Melissa, and Melissa's clearly upset. And Rachel's like, I'm going to do the cuddles. It's what I have to do.
Yeah, it's what it really is.
She says, it reminded me of both my mothers, the human woman and the cat who had licked my fur and carried me around in her mouth.
I missed that entirely. Fucking
yeah, that's how she describes the sound of her own purring.
Wow.
Yeah, they're all going to be fine after this experience.
Yeah, because that's how she realizes she's purring, is like the way the sound makes her feel. And I don't know, I really like that the cat is sort of fighting the anxiety of being confined in like cuddling, because I think all cats are, and the fact that they ever tolerate it, I think is a gift to us that we should appreciate. But also they are smelly and loud, so you know, it balances out.
Yeah, and it's so sad because Melissa thinks that it's her fault.
Yeah,
She thinks that.
Yeah, it's very, very sad. And it's a very sad thing. The idea, like, I mean, I wrote jokingly, like, Rachel now cares about the alien invasion because they made a little girl cry. But also at the same time, like, they did make a little girl cry.
She says of, like, that being her motivation, she says it was a small answer, I guess. I mean, it wasn't some high-sounding answer about the entire human race. It was just about this one girl. And it's just like, I don't know. I get that.
I think that feels very relatable.
Sometimes it needs to be smaller to be real, to be understandable. The scale of the conflict they're dealing with is so huge and like hard to comprehend. And they're kids. So putting it in terms of like, my friend thinks that she's done something and her parents don't love her anymore, but actually there are monsters in their head.
Yeah.
And I can't tell her.
Yeah.
And like, oh, my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they learned about all of this like a week
Tobias
ago,
has only been
too,
a hawk
right?
for a week. They say that earlier in the book.
Yeah.
So maybe 2 weeks since the Andalite.
2 weeks and change.
Yeah. So I feel like we're probably going to get in these first like 5 or 6. I feel like each book is probably going to give us a reason why they're fighting.
Yeah.
I feel like, which will be interesting with Marco.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear Marco's. So one thing that's really cute though is she waited for Melissa to fall asleep. Which I think is really, that's just it's like, because especially with the time drama, it's like, you literally did put yourself on the line and were like, I'm going to wait until this person.
And Tobias is like in her ear the whole time. You have a limited amount of time.
Yeah. Something about that the last time I was reading through it hit me where there was like a physical limit on it.
Yeah, it's especially sad because I don't get the feeling that their friendship is actually gonna, like, this is the closest moment they're probably gonna have at the end. Rachel, I don't feel like Rachel and Melissa are going to continue being friends after this whole, it seems like they are just kind of drifting apart, and Rachel gets to be there for her.
And Rachel's gonna be too busy with everything else, but she wants to make sure that she does everything she can for her friend. After that, she comes out, they split up, and the next day she's thinking about everything. She's sort of still going over it. She has a line, love is pretty important. It's like wearing a suit of armor. It makes you strong. When she's talking about the power that comes from knowing that her family loves her after she's seen what it can do to a person to not know that. And then Jake's like, we're having a meeting at the church tower. And she's like,
that's a long
like
way away.
That's a pretty long walk. And he goes, so don't walk.
That's my Jake headcanon voice now from now on.
She talks about how difficult it is to get the big eagle body off the ground, which I like thinking is because she was just like the springy cat the other day. But she wonders if her human body can get any of the exercise.
Good upper body workout. Yeah,
if it carries over.
It is an interesting proposition. Like, can you work out as the animal you morph into? It just seems too good to be true.
We learned that there are great thermals over the mall.
Yeah, I think about that
parking
now.
lot.
There are birds that, like, there's a big truck parking lot near where I work, and there are these birds that just hang out over top of it all day.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think about, like, how much macadam and, like, asphalt was, like, spread over the land during our childhoods, and the fact that, like, someone who was a writer back then was like, these birds are, like, going over the human parts of the world in this way that, like, we're changing. Something about that is just very wild. It feels very perceptive.
Flying on those lovely mall thermals, Rachel's mentioning how nice it is to fly, and we see into Tobias a little bit with him saying, you do miss things from...
Yeah, you know, it's nice
non-bird life.
Yeah, it's nice to hit the thermals, and it's also nice to eat a bowl of cereal. Or
he mentions really normal things, and it's like, it's really kind of sad.
Yeah.
Not having school the next day, watching TV. And then Rachel says he didn't sound like he was feeling sorry for himself, just like he was mentioning something that happened to be true.
I wonder if he was doing that. What were you going to say, Miranda?
I don't know. Do you think he was doing it for Rachel to try to make sure she still wanted to be a human?
That's exactly what was running through my head.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Which is actually, like, again, a remarkable version of, you know, with Rachel caring for Melissa and then Tobias caring for Rachel, as, like, he watches Rachel get the empowerment she probably so badly wants, and then being like, it's very intoxicating, but, like, your humanness is still something, even though you feel like you're without something in it.
But then things get kind of funny again when Marco shows up.
Yeah, they all morph out of bird morph into walking morphs at the church. And they're all like in their morph outfits.
He says they all look pretty scruffy when you put it all together because they've all just got these weird outfits on. Although Rachel looks stylish, she says.
Well, because she was wearing like a ballet thing, right? But it's like to get around children just running around naked. They were like, we're going to allow children to just wear very tight-fitting clothing when they morph. And it's a good workaround.
Tobias calls himself Bird Boy.
Fantastic
No
Four plus
way.
the Amazing Bird Boy.
Tobias calls himself that.
The Fantastic Four plus the Amazing Bird Boy.
It's nice to see him having fun.
Oh yeah, because Marco's pitching like costumes and like branding, and Jake's like, "What? We're gonna be the Fantastic Four?" And then Marco's like, "No, it doesn't have to be identical. We just need some style, you know?
Right.
Like
the X-Men."
Rachel's like, "We're not superheroes. This isn't a comic book." And Marco says, in classic Marco fashion, "Yes, but I really, really want it to be a comic book."
Which is like the best version of the Jake Rachel I wish I was dreaming.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that's something I would legit say to someone. I relate to Marco, diffused with the jokes.
Yeah.
I also think there's a great moment. I think it follows that. Like, Jake is kind of teasing Marco. He's putting his hand over his mouth to get him to stop talking. And then Marco says, I want to decide what we're not doing next. I should be spending more time with my dad. You know, he's still messed up over my mom. And then his voice cracks. We're talking about all these great, like, character moments. Marco's voice always cracked whenever he mentioned his mom. He'd start out sounding tough and all, but his voice would end up with that little break, that little wobble. It had been 2 years since his mother disappeared. And they said she drowned. There it is. Although they never found her body. His father had fallen apart. It was the main reason Marco was so reluctant to be an animorph. He was worried that if anything ever happened to him, his dad would just give up totally.
Yeah, and Jake wants to jump on it and be impatient, but Cassie just steps right in, peacemaker role, and is like, it is really important that you spend time with your dad. He comes first. I get it. These relationships are why we're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And Rachel agrees with her. And is like, tell your dad you love him when you get home.
Yeah.
But they actually, and they make little jabs at each other, but they're actually, they're bonding in there. It's cute.
Yeah, they are. They're growing up.
They have a debrief about what they learned from the infiltration of the Chapman home, and what they learn is they didn't learn what they wanted to learn, which is where the Kandrona was, but they reiterate, we gotta destroy it, whatever, and then it's like, we don't know what it is, we don't know, blah, blah, blah.
Which from a meta perspective, I know noticed in Eddie's notes here, I'm calling you out. You seem to suspect K.A. Applegate isn't entirely sure what they are yet.
She's asking herself that question, too. Marco says this, excuse me, Rachel, but what is a chondrota? I mean, we know what it does, but what does it look like? How big is it? And she's like, I gotta solve those questions at some point.
Good, important writing exercise. Yeah.
Tobias just says, that's not the impression I got from the Andalite when Marco starts spitting out theories.
Rachel volunteers herself to go back in and
she's
get
like,
the information
I gotta
they
go
need.
back in. And Jake's like, you shouldn't do it alone. And Tobias is like, privately, like, you sure you're just going back in for Chapman to spy on him?
Right? Like, what are your priorities?
She doesn't even acknowledge it. And this is where we find out that she has not told anybody that Chapman talked about killing the cat.
Yeah.
I just have a picture of the cat that says lying from the graphic novel Saga in my notes.
Oh.
It just says girl always with the...
Yeah. And Rachel does actually throw out, what are you going to do? Turn into to Cassie. What are you going to do? Turn into a flea and ride on my back?
Is that the end that you'll go to survey me? It is the fourth mention of turning into a bug, and then it is also the first specific mention of like what we'll find out. It's moving on.
All right. So
cut that.
We learned that apparently...
But keep me saying cut that. I'm a shit show. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna put together an entire 2-minute thing that's just you going, cut that.
Cut that. It's the whole podcast. It's the whole podcast. Cut that. Cut that.
You should make an entire thing of Miranda just trying to continue talking about the novel and Chris going... Blah, 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 blah.
This is one of the problematic recording sessions that we will have, and I will learn my lesson. It will happen.
Thanks for listening to Anidorks. We'll be back soon with lots more to say. Until the Andalites return, or at least until next time. See you soon!